we'd like to invite you to join us for the St Paul's Cathedral book group. The idea for the book group emerged out of a conversation that I was having with a few of my colleagues here at St Paul's about what gives us real nourishment at difficult times like we are facing at the moment. And one of the strands that emerged for all of us was the importance of reading. You know, the kind of reading that takes you out of yourself, that can reframe the world, and can sometimes even unravel some of those emotional knots that you can't get at in any other way. So as we were reflecting on what we might want to offer from St Paul's over the next few winter months, we wondered whether the idea of a book club would be a helpful one. Now, there are book clubs up and down the country, but one of the problems we've got at the moment is that we can't gather together like you normally would in a book club. So this book club is a book club with a slight difference, is that we will gather together on Twitter and for an hour discuss our reactions, our questions, our issues together, but on Twitter. So absolutely anybody can join us. The idea is that we will have a different person introduce a different book each month by video, like I'm doing at the moment. We'll then take about a month to read the book, and then we'll come together on Twitter for an hour and talk about it. So as we were reflecting on what book we might want to read in this book club, the book that emerged for me as the one that I wanted to share with you all at the start of this book club is this one. It's by Rumer Godden, and it's called In This House of Brede. As you will tell from the state of the book, it's a rather well-thumbed book, and I've read it many, many times over the course of my life. I first found it when I was a teenager, and I think it was in a charity bookshop, and I'd read a few books by Rumer Godden and thought I might like this one. I was right, except for I loved it. I was absolutely blown away by it. In fact, as I was telling my colleagues when I was describing it, I loved it so much that after my first reading, I decided I was going to become a nun. You will notice I didn't. But as I was reading this again in preparation for this book club recording, one of the themes from it emerged again for me, and it reminded me why it was so very important. You see, this is a novel about vocation and about how you listen to that call and how you rise to it and follow it. And so for me, in a way, this book is a novel of my own following of vocation. I've done it in all sorts of different ways, but nevertheless, it spoke my story about vocation. And I think that's probably why I loved it so much. So the story is quite a simple one. The story is of someone called Philippa Talbot, who was a senior civil servant in her 40s, who so this story is set in the 1950s and 1960s, quite late on in her life, felt a calling to the monastery. And she joined a Benedictine monastery on the south coast of England, the House of Brede. And the story is a simple telling not only of her calling into the monastery, but her subsequent callings once in the monastery about how she lived her life. So it's about vocation and it's about community. And on one level, almost nothing happens. It is the simple story of a person's life who is following the life of faith, following their vocation, and what it means for them to live in community. And there is a conversation quite early on in the story, which for me sums up why the book is so very important, at least in my story of vocation. Philippa, at the start of the book, is having a conversation with Dame Ursula, who's one of the nuns in the monastery, about her fears, about how she's worried that she hasn't got the strength to live up to her vocation. And Dame Ursula says to her, "A vocation is a gift. If it has been truly given to you, you will find the strength." And I think that for me sums up what this book is really about. It's about hearing your true calling and then finding your true strength to live up to it. So I think in a way this book tells you the story of my own calling, though not of course to be a nun, and the callings that need the strength to live up to it. So it resonates for me in a very deep way, and I'd be very interested to hear what other people make of it. It's interesting reading it again. There are bits of it that fit absolutely firmly into the 21st century experience, and bits that are, of course, incredibly alien and don't fit at all. So I think one of the things that we could talk about in our conversation is what those bits are, what fits, what doesn't fit. But there are two twin strands, I think, that run through the book, and I would encourage you to look out for them and reflect on them as you read. The first is, of course, the theme of vocation, and the second is a theme of community. What does it mean to live properly in community? The joys and the frustrations, the irritations and the delights of community. And what can we learn from this book about how we live in our own communities today? So I commend to you In This House of Brede by Rumer Godden, and hope that you enjoy reading it as much as I did and do. And even if you don't, I hope that it will give you a lot to think about over the course of the next month. So we recommend that you read it and that we gather together on the 16th of December between 7 and 8 p.m. And we join then to discuss it, to raise our questions, to say what we liked and what we didn't like, and to reflect together on the issues that it raises. So we would like to invite you to join us for the St Paul's Cathedral Book Club, and this month to read In This House of Brede by Rumer Godden.